Welcome to another episode of Little Talks, your weekly dose of marketing news and insights from Littlefield Agency.
Oh boy, here we go. Welcome to another episode of Little Talks. I am Roop, and with me this week is not Sam Littlefield. In fact, because Sam's gone, this is going to be a very special episode, maybe an off-the-rails episode of Little Talks. I have instead two special guests we talked about last week, and I think the week before even. Julie Swab.
Hey.
Say hey. They can't always see. And Sarah Ketner.
Hey.
And she gets applause. Or is that for both of them?
Wow.
It's for both.
It's for both.
It's for both.
Okay, thank
Sorry.
you. I appreciate it.
Yeah, so we're back from Memorial Day weekend. Sam's still on vacay, I think. I don't know. He may be back. And one of our favorite shows here is wrapping up. And so we thought instead of doing our usual, here's our topic and here's how you can be better with it and blah, 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 we're going to put a different color on that same thing this week. We're going to talk about Vanderpump marketing rules from the show Vanderpump Rules. Okay. So if you don't watch that show, it's A-OK. Stick with us. You'll eventually watch it and want to go back to this episode like I did. Or if you do watch it, then you know what we're about to get into. So these two are super fans of this show and have been ride or die since day one watching Vanderpump Rules. They watched it in real time over a decade. Mm-hmm. They harassed me for years about wanting me watching it, and I'm like, I hate reality TV. I'm not watching the show. I want nothing to do with it. And I broke down in February and ended up binging 11 seasons in like 2.5 months.
And we were right.
And you were right, yes. So it is a phenomenal show. It's the best of trashy TV. And there's actually, as I watched it, compacted into 11 seasons again in 2.5 months, I started realizing there were some marketing angles to this that would be kind of interesting to talk about. How the, do we call them characters or people? What do we say?
I don't know. I say the cast.
The cast?
The cast.
Okay. I always call them characters because sometimes I feel like they are characters, but.
Well, and you think they're actors.
Sometimes, well, they want to be actors. So that's part of it.
Scandoval.
So we'll get back to that. So yeah, the cast has all kinds of other products and projects and things that they're leveraging out of the show. And I think the cross-promotional ways they do that is really interesting. So today we're going to talk about that. We're going to talk about Vanderpump marketing rules. We're going to go through a few of the cast members on the show. We'll talk about Lisa Vanderpump. We'll talk about how Bravo, the network where the show airs, and all the other spinoffs of it, mostly air, are what they're doing with this universe and this energy. And then we'll at the end kind of wrap up and talk a little bit about how some of this can be a pretty good lesson for us, even in the B2B space, as we navigate daily marketing challenges. So with that, and this may be weird. We're going to do usually we do today's topic and I get a ding. Instead, we're going to do, chapter 1, Stassi Schroeder. Okay. And then we'll get a ding. So Claudia, you ready for the dings?
I was going to do something else.
Oh, you got something else?
Ooh,
okay. Well, this is fun. We'll see what happens there. Are you ready for something else?
And
Awesome.
Entirely appropriate.
Entirely appropriate. So before we get into the individual cast members here, for those who are not initiated, Vanderpump Rules is a show that started off about a bunch of people that worked in a restaurant in West Hollywood, right? Sure. California.
Mm-hmm.
They're all wannabe actors and singers and Hollywood folk, and they work in Lisa Vanderpump's restaurant called SIR, which stands for what, Julie?
Oh, gosh.
Oh, my gosh, no. Superfans.
Oh.
Sexy, unique restaurant.
Oh, yeah.
It's the dumbest initials of all time, but that's what it stands for. She owns 2 or 3 other restaurants as well, and they all kind of work there. As the show progresses, they become famous from this show, and it becomes less about their job as waiters and waitresses and more about their job as reality stars, I guess. Yes. And the show is kind of imploding on itself a little bit right now, but we'll talk about that later. So anyhow, that's what it's about. That's kind of the basic setup. And then a lot of these characters are, I guess, say cast members, have evolved into other stuff.
Character's fine.
Character's fine. Okay, cool.
Yeah.
So we have a lot of notes today, just not so much that we're going to read from them, but we wanted to be able to keep track of all the things we want to try and cover. Okay.
Because there's a lot.
Yeah, there is a ton. Mm-hmm. So we're going to break them down by chapters. We're going to go through 4 or 5 of the cast members here. And cast member 1, chapter 1 is Stassi Schroeder. Mm-hmm. Claudia, where's the... Okay. We'll get there. One way or another.
We already did it.
Well, I was starting over. Okay.
Okay. My apologies.
Okay, so Stassi is one of the OG characters from the first season. First season had what, 4 or 5 kind of main characters?
I don't know. I feel like it was more.
Yeah.
I
Was
mean,
it?
are we counting like Peter?
Oh yeah, Peter for sure.
He's pretty main.
Was
Yeah.
he main?
Peter is the manager, one of the managers of the restaurant, and I think he's still a manager at the restaurant.
I think so.
Yeah.
He's still. I follow him on Instagram, and he still goes into work, so he's there. Stassi was a waitress there, and when the show starts, she's just kind of there. She's a bit of a mean girl early on, and then you kind of. This is true for all the characters on the show. You kind of fall in love with them,
Yes.
and then hate them, and then fall back in love, and then hate them, and it kind of goes in a circle, right?
It's a roller coaster.
It's a major roller coaster. So she was a waitress there, but used her fame. She's no longer on the show,
right.
right? Do you remember what happened? When did she leave? She just wanted out, right?
She got fired.
She got fired.
Oh, she was one of the ones that got fired.
actually
During
got
the pandemic.
canceled.
She got canceled.
Yeah.
That's right.
Yeah.
We can talk about that. So
Yeah.
a handful of the characters, because they're kind of not the smartest people on the planet.
Yeah, we're not really sure that any of them are good people.
No. It's not an
good
endorsement of
TV,
them or their
but not
activities
good
at all.
people.
Yeah.
Some of them got canceled or were kicked off the show in 2020,
Right.
which happened coincidentally during the pandemic. And then the kind of show came back and they were gone. And they never really talked a lot about it until here recently. But she was one of the ones that got canceled. She had used her fame, though, to launch a fashion line and publish 2 best-selling books, right? So I think she had a podcast too, right?
Yeah, she has a podcast.
One that's still going on.
Yeah.
And then she goes on tour for her books too.
So, and a lot of them have podcasts, right?
Yeah.
How many of them had name the ones that have podcasts?
I know Sheena does.
Stassi, Lala.
Yeah.
Oh, wait.
I just read that Stassi got kicked off because of
Yeah, we know.
Faith. It was involving
Yeah.
Faith. Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
She accused another woman that worked at the restaurant of stealing, and the woman didn't steal. And a bunch of them kind of piled in on this accusation and got kicked off the show.
Yeah.
So, but then some of them came back and got another show. We'll talk about that later.
Yeah.
So a lot of them have podcasts. So which of the podcast members? I think all of them do.
Jax.
Yeah.
I thought Lala. Does Lala?
I think she had Give Them Lala was a podcast, which was also her
Yeah.
makeup brand. We'll come to that.
Sheena.
Oh, yeah,
Sheena,
Sheena.
Stassi. And Katie Maloney now has
And
one.
Katie Maloney. So almost all of them do, and
Yeah.
the ones that don't are constant guests on the other one's show.
Yeah.
From what I understand, I don't listen to their podcast. My wife does, and she'll come running downstairs when she's getting ready in the morning and say, "Hey, I just found out that Joe was actually really mean," or whatever's going on there that day. But Stassi used her podcast and the show itself to kind of launch this extracurricular income for her. She wrote these books. That was a whole storyline. Like on season 6 or 7 or something like that.
Well, I think even early on, she was like writing a blog post for Lisa's daughter.
Yes.
I don't know.
Yes.
But I mean, she was very adamant about like, this is not what I'm going to be doing for the rest of my life, and trying to launch herself elsewhere to make money. So
And yes, and so I mean, the kind of crazy part about it is that if it's a reality show, right, they're just supposed to be their lives, and you're just following them. Well, if their lives are I'm writing a book, like why would anyone want this book other than she's on the show? Is what I thought, and I'm like, oh, she's smart. She's like, I'm on the show, so I'm going to make a book and talk about it on the show. Then people will buy it, and it was a New York Times bestseller, right? The first one. I don't think her second one was. Maybe it was.
I think it was.
Maybe. So she had the book, 2 books, and then she had a fashion line, and this was storylines that happened on the show. So this is one of the first times when I'm watching it, I'm kind of recognizing, oh, this is like product placement on steroids in a way, because like you're watching the creation of the book. She had like a whole stressful arc where she was like not writing, and she was supposed to be allegedly. And it was due. The publishers were mad. The publishers got to be on the show as well, which if you're publishing the book, that was probably fun. I always think of that too. I'm like, oh, these other people are like getting their 10 minutes on the show.
right. Yeah, and now she's promoting her mom's jewelry. Like, I'm just like, wow.
Yeah,
So
and she's not
this
even on
is-
the show anymore.
Right.
But so she
Follow her
she
on
kind of
Instagram.
leveraged that fame and these other things to, you know what it reminds me of in sports, athletes kind of have a shelf life, right? They're kind of done somewhere in their early to mid 30s. A lot of them try to get before they retire, not the Tom Brady's of the world, but like, the average guy that's in the NFL or NBA or MLB. A lot of them have side hustles. They'll have restaurants or car lots or insurance companies or whatever to make sure they have the ongoing income. That's what it reminded me of with Stassi, right?
Yeah.
It was kind of fun. Is there anything else you guys want to say about Stassi?
Well, I think it's pretty cool that she was able to leverage, like you're saying, all her side gigs to become her full time, because she did get canceled, but she did get asked back to be on The Valley, I believe.
Oh,
and
really?
And she turned it down.
So she's done with this universe
For now.
for now.
Yeah.
The Valley is a spinoff that just started this year. We'll get to it later. It's another whole thing.
Yeah.
So, okay, that's I didn't know that.
Yeah. So she's able to sustain herself and her family based on all these businesses.
Right.
Pretty smart, pretty good.
She
Pretty
says
good
it's
for
a
her.
good mental.
And she's still
health
married
thing.
to
Bo.
To Bo. We liked Bo. Yeah, that's the other thing. You see these folks date like they're young. They're dating like 1 million people on the show, and you're kind of rooting for some couples more than others. Bo was one you rooted for, so that makes me happy. She has kids now too, right?
Too.
Yeah. Good for Stassi. Good for Stassi.
We're trying hard not to be like, and their names are.
Yeah.
So anyhow, she was a good example of someone leveraging her podcast and social media presence to maintain her brand's visibility and engagement, even past the show. So she's created a brand on the show, took it away from the show, and now is using that to have a living, which is
Right.
kind of cool. Okay, the next one we're going to skip. We're going to do them last. Okay, this will be Chapter 2, Lala Kent.
Incredible.
Yeah, pretty good. So Lala, when I look up, Carrie and I always get curious, being my wife, always get curious about how much money celebrities make, or like on a show, which one's paid the most, stuff like that. You guys do that?
Yes.
Okay. So I don't know how many times we've Googled richest cast members on Vanderpump. Lisa Vanderpump, who started the show, and she used to be on Real Housewives.
Right.
Of which one?
Beverly Hills.
Beverly Hills. That makes
Okay, I was
sense.
about
That's
to
where
say.
she lives.
Julie's also our housewife.
Yeah. When's the Housewives episode?
Yeah, I got it. That's one I won't binge. There's too many of them. But so yeah, she started this whole show, and she's always the top of the list. She was pretty much independently wealthy even before Housewives. I think Ken, her husband, did pretty well in real estate or something like that.
Yes.
And she does very well with her restaurants as well. So she is always at the top. But of the what I call the normal people, Lala Kent's usually number one on the list for money. Lala came into the show around season 3 or 4. She came later. It's pretty early, but like she's not one of the original cast members. She came in secondary. And her whole thing is she was kind of she wasn't a waitress. She was like the hostess, right? She just set people down.
Yeah, which is wild to think about.
Yeah.
Like you're greeted by Lala when you walk in. Like,
Okay, so let's talk about that for a second too then. So have you been to the restaurant, Julie?
I've been to Sir, Tom, and Pump.
Pump, yeah. And which
think-
Pump is gone.
Yeah.
It's already
R.I.P.
gone. R.I.P. Pump. But you've been to the restaurant, and when you were there, you only went because you watched the show, right?
Oh, 100%.
And so you're watching the show, and you're like, okay, there's this alley they all hang out in, and you're like, oh, I want to see the alley.
Yeah.
Were there people hanging around the alley, like taking pictures and stuff?
No, and it was really packed. So the coolest thing that happened is that we saw Lisa's son, Max.
You saw Max.
Yeah.
Okay.
And
Incredible.
Ariana's brother, Jeremy.
yeah.
Okay.
Is that his name?
That's his
Side
name.
characters.
Yeah.
Max works there, oddly enough. At the
Yes.
time he did. He was a waiter, I think.
Yeah, I think he was managing when we were there.
Okay.
But we took pictures with them.
Oh, you have those?
Yeah.
Oh, I'd love to see it.
So
But you went because of the show. So like we'll get to Lisa's part of this later, but like that's another thing. Like you know, the
Yes.
show is the show, but it's also drawing people into the restaurant, and you want to see, is there at Tom, one of the other restaurants, we'll get to down the line. There was like a book, was it Stassi's book launch? I think it was. And there was kind of a big
Yes.
blow up there.
Yep.
So now you're thinking, oh, well, I want to go to this restaurant because I watched it on TV, and then coincidentally you're there. There's a book launch. She's selling books. The
Yeah.
synergies and the marketing opportunities between these different events is kind of wild to me.
yeah, we were there for a friend's wedding, and my Bravo friend and I veered off from the group specifically to go
Yeah.
to these
I would need a
restaurants and
whole
spend
day.
money there.
Yeah.
And they're pretty close. They're like within a couple block radius, right? You can
Yeah.
walk to all of them.
One
And I'm
two are
trying to
next
think,
door.
like, what other restaurants would I know of that by name? You know what I mean?
Right.
That is just so interesting that I can name like all of her restaurants basically.
Yeah, and we had to get the goat cheese balls because they've
Yeah.
marketed those on
Yeah.
the show so much.
Stassi,
and
like day one, was like, I need a side of goat cheese balls.
Yeah.
And like, what is this?
it's pretty incredible.
Yeah.
You've been to
I've been to the
Vegas.
the
one.
Paris setup.
Yeah.
So
Okay.
she has a restaurant in Las Vegas, Paris Hotel. I think it's just called Vanderpump Paris. And it's gorgeous. It's cool. I did get the goat cheese balls. They call them something else there in French. I'll talk about that one later. But yeah, I've also been there. And again, only went because I had seen the show.
Right.
Very exciting. Back to Lala, though. So Lala was a hostess, and she's kind of a lot. She's what she calls herself the truth teller of the group, I guess, which I find to be generally true, I think. She had launched a makeup line fairly early in her setup here called Give Them Lala.
Right.
Did you guys know about the makeup line? Did you seek it out?
I think I Googled it. I'm not a purchaser,
I'm not either,
but
but
I
I
was-
bet it's great.
What's the makeup store at out by AMC at 41st and Yale? It's in that little strip mall there.
Ulta?
Ulta, yeah. I was in Ulta with Carrie after in this episode. We had just watched it, and I was like, "Oh, Lala has a makeup line." So I'm at Ulta, just being a dude hanging around a makeup store with my wife, and I'm like, "I'm gonna find this Lala makeup." I just want to
you
see.
find it?
I just wanna
Wow.
see it. No, I couldn't find it. I said, "Hey, Carrie, I can't. I'm gonna go ask this lady that works here where the Give Them Lala makeup is," and she was like, "If you do, I'll never talk to you again. I'm so embarrassed right now."
That's so funny.
But Lala, yeah, had this makeup line. She eventually had some children and started a baby clothing line. She had a podcast, I think it was also called Give Them Lala. One of the things she did that I thought was kind of weird, though, was the Give Them Lala was a whole deal. Like, it was a podcast name. It was her makeup line.
it's her brand.
It was her brand. And the show shows multiple episodes of her kind of getting started with that brand and how she built it up. And she gets some office space, and her then husband's, she's divorced from him. We won't talk about him. But she was in his office and had like a shelf of like the products, and she had like an assistant, and she was like taking marketing calls and trying to promote this thing. And it was kind of interesting to see. And again, it's the show leveraging or pushing an additional brand, but using that brand for its own content. It's a really weird deal to me. I mean, it's smart, but it's really unusual.
And she named like products of her Give Them Lala
Yes.
makeup after cast members, and
Yeah.
then eventually like the nasty nicknames she gave people, and
found her
so
way
like
there.
just really
like put stuff on sale.
Yes.
I think
like
Rick
fire
Nellis.
sale.
Yeah.
yeah. And yeah, I
didn't know
think
that
that was
part.
really interesting the way she did that. She used the show to help her still.
Yeah.
Like,
I mean, that's the only
herself.
reason we know any of their names is because of the show, so it's smart.
right.
One of the things she did that I thought was not smart, though, and I like Lala, but she decided to unbrand herself from her makeup line. So she said this on the. I haven't checked in to see if this has happened because I couldn't even find it in Ulta, but she was on an episode and said, "Hey, I'm rebranding. I got to remove my name from it so it can stand on its own and be its own thing." And I thought, why would you do that?
Right.
Like, for a few reasons. One, we only know about the makeup because of your name and your fame on the show. And two, it's been around about, at this point, 6 or 7 years. So any kind of equity you've built in that label, you're just destroying it. It felt really unusual to me that you would do something like that. And I don't know how that's panning out for her. Again, she is the richest individual cast member on the show, so I think she's pretty smart in that way.
That shocks me that she is.
Yeah, but
Yeah.
you know what? Now that I think about it, when she divorced Emmett, who was a major Hollywood producer with a lot of money, maybe that's where a lot of her wealth came.
Yeah.
But from what I understand, the makeup line did very well. Like, it sold pretty well.
But what is it called now?
Well,
I'm trying to
I
like.
looked it up and it just says givethemlala.com. So maybe I know she talked about it a bunch.
Maybe she didn't do it.
So maybe she didn't
Someone
follow
talked to her.
through with it.
Oh, thank God. I've worried about that for months. Okay.
Maybe people talked some sense into her.
Good. Well,
be.
good for Lala. Good for her clothing line and her stuff she's up to there. Okay.
Another thing about Lala that I thought was,
Go ahead.
sorry, not to
No,
derail us.
no, keep going.
But
You need a lot to-
I thought it was pretty funny how she took the viral moment of her story, sent it to Daryl, who's her attorney. With
Why do you know Daryl's name? I don't know.
No,
Daryl.
the whole
It's like a
the whole
classic
Scandoval.
line.
Okay.
Yeah,
Yeah.
from the Scandoval.
From the Scandoval.
from
She did
Scandal.
these series of stories on her Instagram and saying, send it to Daryl, who's her lawyer. And it kind of caught on and went viral. So she made sweatshirts or some merch saying send it to Daryl. And she used that money to put a down payment on her house now in LA,
Right.
in the Valley. So
A lot of them did this during Scandoval, made merch, like a worm with a mustache, like was
Yeah.
on a tote bag.
Yeah.
Like, and I was this close to buying it. It was in my cart.
We'll talk about Scandoval specifically in a little bit. It's a big kind of nuclear moment in the show that really divided viewers and friends.
Yeah.
say the
Specifically
least.
these friends.
Specifically these friends. But it was kind of a big moment. Happened about a year or two ago. And if you don't know what that, people that didn't watch the show heard Scandoval. I was hearing about it before I started watching it. It was one of the reasons I started watching the show, actually.
it was on CNN, for
Yeah,
goodness
it
sake.
was on a lot of stuff.
It's everywhere.
But we'll come back to that. So anything else we want to say about Lala? No? Okay. Well, I'm going to skip the next one and go to chapter 3. We're going to talk about Kristen Doute.
She's on it with the button.
She is. That's a good job, Claudia.
Thank you.
Kristen is also a original cast member. She was a waitress there. She got fired multiple times, came back. She's one of the older cast members. Most of them are in their start off in their early to mid 20s, and the show's been going on for 11 years or whatever. So they're in their 30s and some in their 40s now. But she was one of the older ones. Her and Jax were one of the older ones to start out with, and she was just a lot to deal with. She seemed like her and Jax were the ones that stirred up the most crap to kind of keep storylines going and kind
Yes.
of making accusations about people sleeping with each other or saying crap about another person on the show or whatever. So she's a kind of controversial figure, but one of the things she did on the show that I thought was kind of dumb at the time, but I think it's still going. She started a T-shirt line.
Right.
And has relaunched it, to my knowledge, at least twice, maybe 3 times now.
Yeah.
And every time she relaunches it, guess what? It's an episode of the show. And so she relaunched it launched it on Vanderpump, the Vanderpump spinoff, The Valley, which started this year, a couple months ago, March, I think. She relaunched it on there recently, and I was like, man, is this thing doing well or not doing well? Or like, what's going on with Doute in this T-shirt line? Do you guys know anything about him? And she doesn't put catchphrases like Lala and Jax does. Hers are like,
Right.
I'm going to say art loosely, but like she kind of designs them.
Yeah. And I would say that's probably her, like, it's her vibe too.
Yeah.
Is that she is, you know,
Kind of a
she's
free
very
spirit,
into,
is that what you
yeah,
wanna say?
into crystals and
Yeah.
psychic readings and astrology. And,
Poor decisions with boyfriends.
yeah.
Yeah, probably one of the worst, I'd
And
say.
white wine.
White wine, yeah.
Yeah. I don't know how successful it is, but I hope it is. But the relaunching and everything makes me skeptical.
Yeah, and I've not seen that she's like working on other things. Like I only ever see that she has Vanderpump money and then she has her T-shirt money.
Well, remember they did the WeHo wine
That's true.
Oh, I
with
forgot about
the
that.
Witches of
Stassi,
WeHo.
Katie. Yeah. Oh, that's what
Okay.
it was. Witches of WeHo.
Yeah, 3 of the characters, Stassi, who we talked about up front, Kristen, who we're talking about now, and Katie, who we may talk about, I don't know, all got together and launched a wine brand. A lot of them have done like liquor lines, which makes
Yeah.
sense because you're in a show that's about a bar and a restaurant. So I kind of get that. In fact, Lisa infamously sells her wine and her vodka label.
Yes.
That she's very proud of. That's featured all over the show. Not
It
just
is.
product placement, like they talk about it all the
Right.
time. Yeah, I forgot about the Witches of WeHo. That dissolved. It lasted a couple of years, I think. And
Yeah.
then they all got mad at each other and it collapsed. But yeah, that was the formation of that also featured on the show. So it's kind of building in this interest, just like I'm seeking out makeup from Lala I'm not even going to wear, right, at Ulta. It makes you think about, oh, next time in the liquor store, is this there? Or, oh, I've wondered if this place carries it. It's the leveraging of the show is pretty cool.
And like, I would also say, just being fans of the show, like if I were to get Julie a gift, which
Right.
I'm going to go straight for a Vanderpump Rules or some sort of Bravo related
Right.
thing.
Yes,
So it's just
100%.
very, like the fan base also helps promote all
Helps
of their
support
products.
and keep it going. Yeah, it's kind of it's the reality to me. This is going to be the geekiest thing I've ever said on this podcast.
Can't wait.
It's the reality show version of the Marvel universe. Is
Yes.
what Bravo's got going here.
Yeah. BravoCon.
Especially with BravoCon.
They've got
now.
their own convention that happens. every minute of that network is about the reality shows or reviewing the reality shows or talking about what's happening next on the reality shows. It's crazy.
Yeah, watch what happens live. I mean, some people just tune into that as well right after.
I've been trying to avoid that addiction, but I do see the clips online all the time, and I'm like, I should be watching
They're so
this.
funny.
It's good.
Yeah.
I love Andy.
Yeah.
Shout out Andy.
Shout out to Andy. Yeah. Okay, so anything else you want to say about Kristen? She's usually the bottom of the bottom of the list of people making money off her stuff here. It's not for lack of trying. She's just a tough character, I think.
Yes.
She's not as beloved.
Okay, let's move on. Let's go chapter 4, Jax Taylor.
Woof.
So Jax is definitely one of the. Did you say whoops?
I said woof.
Oh, you don't like Jax?
He's problematic.
He
Do
is.
you love him?
He's his boy,
Yeah, I kind of declared early on Jax was my boy.
which is a wild thing to still
And then
say.
You find out he's the number one guy in this group. It all makes sense. So for those that don't watch it, Jax is probably if there had to be a main character, he's probably equal to. He's the main character.
He's the number one guy in the
number
group.
one guy. He says so himself. From the early part of the show, he's a bartender at Sir. He's kind of a muscly actor, model, wannabe. They all are, but like he looks like that kind of guy. And he sweats a lot. He drinks a lot. They all drink a ton. They're all constantly drunk. But I'd say Jax is easily the drunkest of all of them at
And
any given moment.
A pathological liar.
And he will tell you he's a liar.
Yeah.
Like, why would you believe me? I'm a liar. Like,
Right.
I saw he was on a villain show even, where all
Yes.
the Bravo villains. And I was like, why is Jax on a villain show? He's a great guy.
Again,
I've had friends like Jax is the thing. So like when you're in a group of guys, when you're a group of guys like Jax is with Tom and Tom, who we'll talk about in a minute, you always have that one guy that's a little bit out there, but he's still your boy. And so like I kind of related to that a little bit with Jax. I also understand why women would hate him, which I think both of you do. Yeah, maybe. Okay.
hate's a
Love
strong
to
word.
hate. Love to hate.
Yeah.
Love to hate. That's the way he was.
He's
on the show.
entertaining for sure.
Yeah,
There's a reason Lisa had him around. Yeah.
for sure.
Jax's big mistake was telling Lisa that it was his show and not hers, and then piling in on the controversy that got everyone else canceled. And so he also was removed from the show in 2020, and then he got married to a woman named Brittany who was on the show. That was a storyline there as well. He's just relaunched, left, has come back with a show called The Valley because they're all older now and they're all starting to have babies and things. And so it's about him and his friends in the Valley. Kristen Doute, we just talked about, she's on it as well. And I hear a lot of the other cast members are signing up to be on season 2, which makes us worried that maybe Vanderpump's ending.
Right.
We don't know the season finale. We're recording the third part of the reunion, which is really the season finale for this recent season of Vanderpump Rules, airs tonight. So we don't know if it's ending tonight or not, but that's kind of the rumor.
Feels likely.
It does feel likely. So Jax has come back, and he's got his own spinoff, and he's on Bravo with The Valley. Currently, at the same time, Lisa, who is not really on the show anymore, on Vanderpump or definitely The Valley, started a new show called Vanderpump Villa that takes place with all new characters and all new cast members.
Which you fully watched
Which I
as
watched,
well.
And I liked, yeah.
So I feel like now you're a bigger fan than we are.
I might be.
almost.
You are, and everyth's more recent for you.
Yeah.
Yeah, very so, very much
Yeah.
so. So anyhow, there's all these shows and spinoffs. Jax is involved with one of them. It was apparently him and Brittany's idea.
Which I wonder if they regret now.
Right.
Jax was also one of the very first ones to start promoting side hustles on the show. And he had an episode where he got mad at a guy in a parking lot and took his sweater off and was going to fight him. And this big white cable sweater became kind of a thing.
Yes.
So he started a sweater line,
Yes.
which I thought was dumb. I don't know if it ever got off the ground or not. He talked about it all the time on the show, but you never saw him do anything with it.
Right.
Right.
Well, he was also very much modeling. Like, yeah, he was still trying to do that.
That white cable net chunky sweater or whatever it's called is in the clubhouse, Andy's clubhouse.
for
Watch
show.
What Happens Live.
Yeah,
It's like
it's
framed.
Yeah. It was kind of a big moment in the show. So he had the sweater line that nothing ever happened with, to my knowledge. He had an exercise app. Remember when he tried to create the exercise app?
Oh, yes.
Which I also felt was an excuse for him to just take his shirt off and work out and get sweaty.
Right.
But he didn't he have other cast members like come film episodes and
Yes.
stuff.
Yeah.
So early on he was.
He was trying
Hustling.
to come up with stuff, and it never really took off for him. And he, again, fought with everybody all the time. But he currently has kind of come back a little bit. And he has this show that is good. The Valley's good.
Yeah.
And he has not one, but 2 bars now. So he has the one bar he's kind of talking about on the Valley, again, using the show to promote a restaurant or a bar or whatever. I'm sure people are already ready to go see what the hell's going on at Jax's bar, and it hasn't even opened yet, to my knowledge. And now I read last week he's opening a second bar with one of the Toms, Tom Schwartz.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, which is interesting that Tom Schwartz is doing something without Tom Sandoval because of Scandoval, I guess we'll talk about in a
Right.
second. So, yeah, Jax is doing all that. He also had, during the lean years when he got fired before the Valley, so the last 4 years, I guess, I saw he was also promoting a T-shirt line and baby clothes and things like this. And they all had the sayings from the show, like the number one guy in this group on like a
Right.
baby
Oh,
onesie,
yeah.
which I thought was funny.
Very funny.
There's a kind of an Andy Warhol type painting of him that's in his apartment where he looks coked out of his mind.
Oh, no.
Yeah, and it's kind of Andy Warhol view of his head, and that's on shirts I see now. And on the Valley, I see them wearing those clothes
Right.
that they're selling. So
Yeah.
clearly product placement there, pretty good for him.
And on an episode, he was promoting that hair regrowth.
Forgot about that. And he kind of questioned, the cast questioned he even needed this. And they were like, Jax never saw an opportunity to market something that
Yeah.
wouldn't make him $1. So yeah, he's kind of the most obvious one when he does it, I think. Some of the others, it works into a natural storyline of things they're doing on the show. But like he's just like, hey, I'm selling this. And, those brands, that hair growth cream or whatever it was, knew that if they signed Jax, they weren't going to get the most reliable spokesperson, but they were going to get airtime on Bravo, which
Right.
is pretty good. So I kind of wonder if in those situations they had to pay Bravo extra for that episode to even air. Does Bravo say, yeah, we're going to feature you on the show as part of the storyline, but we're going to need you to kick in a few million for that placement?
Yeah.
Or are they like, well, we negotiate with Jax, and so that's the deal. Well, I don't know. I'd be curious to know how that works out behind the scenes. But it kind of, you think about influencers and how brand influencer marketing is this whole deal, right? Where people interact with influencers because of their social media following. Certainly these Vanderpump characters have big social media followings, but that's kind of not what you're tapping into them for exclusively. You're wanting to get on the show and be on TV where you're exposed to, millions and millions and millions of people as well.
Right.
So Jax definitely does that. Okay, we've come to the one that might be controversial. This is chapter 5, Tom Sandoval and Tom Schwartz. 2 horns for that one. So the reason these guys are put together on the list here is because they're called collectively the Toms. They both happen to be named Tom. They were roommates, met pretty early when they moved to Hollywood.
Off Craigslist.
Craigslist.
Just so sketchy.
Jax, we just talked about, was the third roommate. So these guys were all buddies,
Right.
kind of going through stuff together. They were all dating different people on the show. Sandoval was dating Doute when we first meet him. He moved on to some other characters. We'll get to that in a minute. Schwartz was dating Katie and eventually got married and then divorced. And then he saw someone that he shouldn't have, also contributed maybe to some of the Scandoval problem.
Right.
You guys are really wanting to go on that one.
We have a lot to say.
So these two have been kind of fan favorites, and then became part co-owner. They're not really owner. They don't own Tom, but Lisa Vanderpump, who I think is a really smart woman, said, well, these guys are pretty famous. They're very beloved, and please go back in time. They were beloved.
They were.
People loved
Yeah,
the Toms.
they were.
good dudes and friendly and happy and always trying to help each other and their friends. Remember those good times. But Lisa Vanderpump saw this and said, well, I'm going to leverage their name,
Right.
and we're going to create a bar and a restaurant called Tom Tom. And she offered them kind of part ownership in it for some pretty low money. But when you look at how much they make per episode, I realized it wasn't that much. Like,
Right.
she should have gone for a lot more. But she wanted to use their name to get people to come to this restaurant, which completely worked. Where they spent at least a season and a half, it might have been 2 seasons, showing the construction and the trouble trying to get this restaurant opened, and all the drama around that. So like literally the whole season for those characters, their storyline was about the opening of a restaurant, which was going to be featured on the show and make people want to line, which line up. Did you go to Tom Tom? Did you say?
Yeah.
You did go to Tom Tom. Is the clock thing pretty cool?
It is cool.
That massive clock behind the bar. That kind of
Yeah.
spins.
Lisa knows what to do.
She
for
does. It was a
restaurants.
really cool vibe.
Oh, yeah. Did you see either of the Toms?
No.
That's disappointing. See, and you expect it, didn't you? You were like, I'm going to see a Tom here.
Yes.
Yeah. Probably Schwartz. He seems like he's there the most. So the Tom Tom bar opened. They participated in that for a while. Then they decided to open their own restaurant.
Schwartz and Sandy's.
The terribly named Schwartz and Sandy's, which was also a whole thing on the show. And then we spent a season them getting that thing together. And they showed on the show, people lined up around the block to get into these things. So they were very, they also, at different points, I think they're bringing this back up. I just read, they have a bourbon label as well that they're trying to get off the ground again. So, they pretty much have stayed in their, I don't want to say in their lane, but they're on a show that's about restaurants and bar life, and they're opening restaurants and bars and liquor labels. So it kind of all goes together and makes some sense.
And then Tom Sandoval ventured off into some music.
Oh, yeah.
Unfortunately.
I forgot about this.
Passion.
Yeah,
Yeah.
Tom Sandoval has a lot of talents, and one of them is music. And he has what's the name of the band? Tom Sandoval and the
Most Extras.
The Most Extras, yeah. And so he's used the show also to promote the band and I'm going to say music.
Yeah.
I like Tom. I don't know. We talked about this. If he was in town, would you go see him? Like if the band was playing at Brady or something?
If someone gave me tickets,
If I were that someone to
Maybe.
give you tickets.
maybe,
Okay.
just to see what it, I don't know that I would stay the whole time.
Really?
But
Is it because of the scandal?
And that's a wrap. We hope you've enjoyed our little chat and found ways to grow your own marketing strategies. Remember to subscribe wherever you listen to podcasts and follow us on social media @Littlefield Agency.